Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the moderator of the next session, Tom Nuttall.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Tom Nuttall. I'm a correspondent for The Economist based in Berlin. This panel was originally titled The Middle East Peace Puzzle, but today, of course, the region stands on the brink of one of the most serious conflicts in its history. Israel's strikes on Iran have decimated the military leadership of the Islamic Republic, damaged some of its nuclear facilities, invited a strong overnight reaction, drones and missiles raining down on Israeli cities. It seems clear that more is to come. It looks like a huge gamble by the government of Benjamin Netanyahu that Iran, short of allies, its proxies weakened, its air defenses destroyed, and an American administration that appears to have lent at least tacit support to this operation, that all of this presented an opportunity to execute an audacious operation that appears to have been months or years in the planning. But of course, no one can know what the consequences of this will be, from regional stability to nuclear proliferation, from the future of the Iranian regime itself to the ripple effects beyond the Middle East. So to discuss these and more questions, I will be joined by an excellent panel who I now invite to join me on stage, starting with Amos Yadlin, who's president of Mind Israel. Please join us. Next, we have Ebtesam Al-Ketbi, who is the founder and president of the Emirates Policy Center based in Abu Dhabi. Tobias Ellwood, who is a former British Conservative MP and minister, now a security and defense consultant. And finally, Asaad Shamlan, who is the Director for Center of European Studies at the Prince Said Al Faisal Institute for Diplomatic Studies in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Okay, Mr. Yadlin, I think it makes sense to start with you. You've literally written the book, I think, on Israel and Iran. Give us some insight into Israeli decision-making. Why strike now? What's the goal here? Sometimes to listen to Prime Minister Netanyahu, it sounds an awful lot like regime change. Is that right?
Not at all. Not at all. It's about nuclear, not about regime. Maybe the regime change will be the result of it, but it's not the goal. I want to refer to your opening remark about the title of the session, about peace and war in the Middle East, and unfortunately they are intertwined. And not every war is against peace. Sometimes war leads to peace. I was a young pilot in Yom Kippur War 52 years ago, and it was the last war between Israel and Egypt, because they have decided that war is against both countries' interests, and it's better to have peace, even if it's sometimes a cold peace, than going to war. And the war haven't started last night. The war had started on the 7th of October by a terror organization that attacked Israel with encouragement from Iran that created a network of a ring of fire around Israel, Hezbollah, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Syria, the Houthis, the Shia militia in Iraq, and Iran was behind it with money, with weapons, with training, and with ideology. And the ideology was to destroy Israel. There is only one UN member state that called for the annihilation of Israel, and this is Iran. There are other countries that dislike Israel, that have no relation with Israel. Nobody called for the destruction of the state of Israel. So this is the core of the problem. What happened 2 nights ago is extension of the Begin Doctrine. The Begin Doctrine is saying, if there is a country that calls for the destruction of Israel, Israel will not let it have the tool, the instrument to do it. The instrument is a nuclear bomb. And this is, as you said, not a new issue. The Iranian nuclear program is 25 years old. The Iranians is a great nation. The Iranians are old nation, sophisticated nation. They know something about strategy. They invented the chess. They know something about tactics, beautiful rugs, and we never underestimate them. The Iranians have learned the lessons from Saddam Hussein, from Bashar Assad, and they decided that they will go to the nuclear bomb not as fast as possible, but as safe as possible. And they created a cover story, and they developed all the ingredients as much as they can under legitimate cause, claims. But what Israel and the US discovered lately, that after finishing basically the enrichment capabilities, enrich a lot of uranium to 60%, and going to 90% is a piece of cake, is about a week. They have missiles, as everybody knows. So the last part is the weaponization. By the way, they did weaponization back in 1998. But then, in 2003, the Americans removed Saddam Hussein. And Bush 43 has a speech on the axis of evil. Iraq, Iran, North Korea. They was afraid that they are next, so they stopped. Because, remember, as safe as possible. But now they felt that they can go to the bomb. And I think, if you ask me why 2 nights ago, because weaponization have started, because Iran was about to break out to the bomb, they felt that this is the right time. When Ukraine is in a war and when maybe Taiwan tomorrow in a war, this is the right time. And Israel and America has the intelligence about it. And the risk from attacking Iran were decreasing because Hezbollah, which was their main issue, their main instrument to deter Israel, was destroyed in the last summer. So that's why I think the operation have started.
Okay. We can perhaps come back to this question of whether war can create the conditions for peace. But let me move to Dr. Al-Ketbi. You're based in Abu Dhabi. How are these events being regarded in the UAE and elsewhere across the Gulf? We have seen perhaps something of a tactical rapprochement between some of the Gulf states and Iran. The Saudis condemned the Israeli attack on Friday, but presumably they're not going to be shedding any tears for the head of the IRGC or the Iranian armed forces.
Well, look, I think Dr. Gergash has mentioned this yesterday and today. The Gulf, the only goals for the Gulf to focus on themselves, on their developments, they have visions for the future. So any disruption and disrupt the connectivity in this area, it's affected them a lot. So that's also, we condemn that because we don't want any disruption. But also this is the reality on the ground that, yes, as Dr. Gergash mentioned, Iran is our neighbor, but it's not, it's a very difficult neighbor. And I'm always saying we are under the threat of Iran, of its missiles, of its nuclear program, of its drones, of its proxies in the region, and we suffered from that. And I think also the people in the Levant suffered a lot, Lebanon and the Syrian and the Iraqi, they are still suffering also. So, but we don't want war in the Gulf. We have experienced many war now. For us, well, in the Trump 1.0, we supported the maximum pressure Trump did. What was the retaliation from the Iranian? It was against us. It wasn't against the American. So any retaliation this time, if the Iranian wanted to put pressure on the American, it will be on the American interest, where it's in the Gulf mostly.
Yep.
And it's always the Iranian retaliation against the Gulfists. And of course, now it's going to Israel. I was talking to Amos before that. They will, the killing of civilian in Iranian grounds, it means that they want also to kill Israeli civilian, okay? And this is, they find it more painful for the Israeli. And they will continue to do that. For us, of course, I mean, diplomacy, reconciliation in the region, this is for all the Gulf, is for our interest. But, you know, this is a Middle East where you cannot control, and that is the puzzle in the Middle East. If you look to all these kind of peace deals done in the region, because nobody touched the grassroots basis of this. Even between Iran and Israel, it is both of them looking to each other as existential threats. And that's why this will continue, that war between them, because each one of them want to finish the other and want to finish its nuclear capabilities. If you just look yesterday how many calls Araqji did, I was counting 24 yesterday, because they seek mediation now. They want mediation, but to stop the war, to stop. It's hurting them, but of course the Iranians will not give up their nuclear capabilities. Even during the negotiation, met some official Iranian, they said, we are not going to give our nuclear capabilities. So for us, we are under the threat of their missiles or their drone, even it's going over our skies. We hope that this will end and we reach a diplomatic solution. We hope that the American can have a pressure to stop the war, and Iranian be realistic and come to the negotiation table for their own people's sake. Because they don't have, I mean, you look to Iran, look to their infrastructure. They don't have something to lose. But for the Gulfists, they have many things to lose if only one drone came. And we experienced that.
Tobias, Ellwood, give us your sense of how things may play out from here. That the list of potential developments is long, well-rehearsed, deeply worrying in many respects, from an Iranian rush to the bomb to attacks on perhaps US bases in Qatar and Bahrain, as you were suggesting, disruptions to shipping in the Strait of Hormuz with impacts on oil prices. What scenario should we be preparing for?
Well, firstly, can I say thank you? It's a pleasure to be on such a distinguished panel. I think, if I may, just quickly put together 3 factors that sit behind as a backdrop that need to be placed in perspective. The first is the proxy influence that Iran has had on the region, not just today and yesterday, but actually for a number of decades. I was foreign minister for the Middle East for a number of years, and I was deeply frustrated that more wasn't done to check the Houthi advance and growth in Yemen. Why didn't we do more to try and put that particular fire out? Visiting Lebanon as well, what was going on with with Hezbollah? And of course, we have what's happening in the West Bank and Gaza, the absence of a bona fide, a credible governance structure that would actually become more popular and engaging rather than an extremist organization. And the West, the international community, and indeed the Middle East, perhaps could have done more. The Abrahamic Accords was a good step forward. That's the first aspect. The second is where we are geopolitically, something we've been discussing here at the GlobeSec, is the fact of disorder, the growing disorder. America dialing back from an interest in supporting where our world is going, that sense of duty to uphold the international rules that previous presidents have absolutely lent into. And then the third, I'm afraid, is the domestic politics of Netanyahu, because, of course, if war stops, then he has to face the music domestically. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't then certainly stand up to the Hezbollah, Houthis, and Hamas, and indeed Iran. But I come from a military background, and you look to see where your tactics actually move towards a longer-term strategy. Something you're taught at Sandhurst and West Point is, what do my orders mean 2 ranks or 3 ranks up? Where does my work fit in to the bigger determination of where our wider objective actually is? And I look at what's going on in Gaza, and I look at what's going on in Iran now, and I don't know where the off-ramp is. This is something that Dr. Gaga said yesterday. Where is this all going? And when Netanyahu decided to launch this attack, I understand not with the blessing of the United States, who actually, their intelligence services have said there's no indication that there's a breakout time from the nuclear capability. That doesn't mean that Iran should not be checked in some way, certainly. It doesn't mean that should be a longer-term strategy to enforce and encourage and develop stability in the Middle East. But the method that's being approached now, I find very, very difficult indeed, because nobody is now in charge of where this goes or where this unfolds. And your question, which I've now come to, what next? These are difficult times. Stakeholders involved. What will Britain do? We came to the aid of Israel back in October 2024. Will we do the same? What will Russia do now? Iran is a pivotal ally in the Middle East. Where will China go? You've got this little axis that's developing of strength as well. So what's been opened up here has no clarity. It's very volatile indeed, and it's important, as we discussed yesterday on this very stage, or what's being discussed, there needs to be a clear off-ramp as to where this goes, but not losing sight in how absolutely you allow Iran to move into a better space, which is actually wise, helpful, and safer for the whole of the Middle East, because it's been such a disruptive force over the last 3 decades.
Dr. Al-Shamlan, off-ramps. Is a potential off-ramp somehow a return to the nuclear negotiations that had in sort of nugatory form revived under Donald Trump? Might we find our way somehow to a JCPOA 2.0 as a consequence of this attack? Or is that wishful thinking?
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for moderating this session. Well, I think when we look at the question of Iran's nuclear program, it has a long history, and things were, in a way, moving towards a hopeful direction. Indications are mixed, but there was enough reasons to engage Iran by the United States. And then we have what we had in the past 2 days. I want to just alert to, I mean, we spoke here and everyone knows about Iran's disruptive behavior in the region. I'm not going to repeat that, that's so clear. But I think the new strategic reality today, especially for us in the Gulf, and I'm speaking here as an academic, we always thought that the danger, the threat comes from the East, Iran, for good reasons. I think now we have to think, and I think this emerged in the wake of the Gaza war, that there is a neighbor to the West which can be very dangerous. In a sense, what is so alarming about what happened since Gaza is the easy way, effortless way that Israel uses excessive violence, excessive means of violence, and in a way which is also a bit different this time, even the history of the region, because in the past, when there is an excessive violence, we attribute it to a regime. We say Saddam regime, the Assad regime. No, but this time, it's a government elected, but with a massive support for the use of extraordinary violence and utter disregard for human life. Now, this is a very interesting phenomena that we need to gauge and think through, not for today, but for the future. So, if we are talking about the Iran negotiations, I want to specify one thing. which people get confused, and the Israelis would like to confuse people with this. You see, the Gulf position, let's say Saudi Arabia, and the other GCC members, is different from the Israeli position vis-à-vis the nuclear program. Israel is for zero enrichment, meaning that no enrichment, no domestic enrichment at all. The GCC countries and Saudi Arabia cannot be for zero enrichment. They are signatory to the NPT, and the NPT allows you, once you sign, the right to have a use for civilian purposes. And actually, Saudi Arabia has its own projects for some time for a nuclear civilian program where domestic enrichment is essential. And this is, I think, many people who are outside of this discussion do not understand it. They say, well, why don't you do like the UAE, which is totally, the 1, 2, 3 gold standard, what the America called the gold standard. Saudi Arabia cannot do that for one reason, is that in Saudi Arabia, domestic enrichment is necessary for commercial reasons. The estimates varies, but it goes from 1.5% to up to 7% of the world reserve of uranium in northern Saudi Arabia. And the Saudi government, part of the diversification vision, wants to use that at a certain point for export. So the idea of a zero enrichment and buying it from us just defeats that purpose. So the Israeli position and the Saudi position, the Gulf, are two distinct. We are against weaponization, but not against Iran having a nuclear program for civilian use, and that is consistent with international law. You cannot say you are with international law and then you deny this because this is the NPT. Israel is not a party to the NPT, and it is a nuclear power, of course. Although they talk about strategic ambiguity, there is no strategic ambiguity about that. Everyone knows that Israel is armed to teeth with nuclear weapons. Now, what will come out of this reality? We have two options today. Either we say, and unfortunately many people even saying it out loud today, following the Israelis, that might is right. If I have the strength, I'll do it. Forget about international law, forget about international norms, etc. Or we can say, we cannot live in a world like this, that we need rules, we need international law. And here, the paradox here is that a country which has been created by the UN today stands as the one who most disregarding the UN Charter. But this is our choice now. Are we going to say, no, there is an objective standard by which states deal with each other. We call it the international law. And let's see, and let's judge each action according to this standard. Or else, yes, might is right, and then, that's what they call it Hobbesian world, right? But even Hobbes, he didn't put this as something that we should celebrate. It's a problem that we have to overcome in order to create societies. So to create international society, we need rules, and it's about time that people who care about international law to stand up and be counted. You cannot object to Russia in the Ukraine and then agree with whatever Israel is doing with its neighbors, particularly with the Palestinians.
Okay,
Thank you.
Lots to pick up on there, and we'll come back to some of these themes. I hope to leave plenty of time for questions, so please start thinking about what you might want to ask, and people watching online are able to submit questions via Slido, and I can get to those shortly as well. Let's talk about the regional dynamics a little bit more. I think Tobias mentioned in passing the Abraham Accords. Before October the 7th, there was some hope that there might be a way of folding in the Saudis into the Abraham arrangement. Even after October the 7th, those hopes haven't yet been extinguished, although, of course, the Palestinian question has come to the forefront of everybody's minds again. Maybe I can ask our guests, particularly from the Gulf, what is your sense of where we may be going on that? Is there any world now, particularly following the events of the last 36 hours, in which we could see some kind of broader strategic realignment, formalization of Saudi-Israeli relations, possibly including a pathway to a Palestinian state. Is this a pipe dream, or is that one possible way forward? Maybe I can start with you, Dr. Al-Ketbi.
Look, as Girgash said, the Abrahamic Accord, it is not alignment against anybody. It's kind of alliance in a way to creating an arc of economic development. Even Palestinian can benefit from that. There is misperception about Abrahamic Accords. It's not a peace agreement. We don't have war with Israel, okay? It is thinking out of the box because we are in a puzzle in the Middle East, okay? Maybe engagement of Israel in the region, maybe when they are testing normalization, but things doesn't go as you want it. It goes, look, Netanyahu signed Abrahamic Accord. But the domestic politics in Israel always affecting what's going on. And he came with another extremist government. And on the other side, you have also the Iranian, whom they have using their proxies, and they saw the talks before September 7th, and that talk between Saudi and Israeli is going on. So they felt they are losers. Hamas also, Saudi talked to Abbas and they didn't approach them. They felt they are losers. So losers always turn to spoilers. And this is what happened. What happened in October 7th, I think Hamas did not think that the Israeli retaliation will be the same that before. It takes 1 month, then everything goes back to normal. But they did not expect that. Now, the Saudi, of course, they stopped that talks. And they are also, again, talking about that. If we go back, the two-state solution should be on the table. That is the only way, which is Netanyahu now. And I would say both Israeli and Palestinian now traumatized after also those whom they were supporting two-state solution in Israel. They are not anymore. There are many I know them. Because what happened? But my worry now, and I said this in Herzliya conference 2 years ago, before even what happened, that if this government will continue, will create more violence in the Palestinian side, and the Arab side will not be ready to join the club. So we have to stop the violence. Of course, what happened again? Stop everybody. Nobody can dare now that they will sign any kind of and I think Saudi, they don't want to join Abrahamic Accord. They want to have their own accord. If Gaza war continue as it is, there are many spoilers will use that, okay, to stop any kind of talking about normalization, and will justify going in violence, even on the Palestinian side. So Gaza war must be stopped. Before talking about two-state solution, we have to talk about how to stop the war in Gaza to save the civilian people regarding that. Just I want to comment on what Asaad said about what Gulf is, how they are looking. Yes, for the Gulf is the most dangerous for them in the Iranian side, the missiles and the drones, because it's always coming to their side. The nuclear capabilities, they know that Iran cannot use it. In this area, they cannot. It's only for deterrence. And I would say, maybe if it has been accepted, if the Iranian accepted, that enrichment can be done in a neutral area, okay, can be done in the 3 islands that is occupied by the Iranian Emirati islands, and there will be the American watching, if Iran, of course, accept the problem that Iran does not accept any kind of solution for enrichment, and they are insisting should be in their land. Let us say these 3 islands occupied their land. European supervision, American, and also the Gulfies. And this is the only solution we can have. But it depends on the Iranian if they are accepting that.
Yep.
Now, with this situation, I don't think the Iranian they will. Of course, they need that solution. They are dying for lifting the sanctions. This is what bleeding Iranian every day.
Yep.
But if this both wars continue, which I think it will continue between Israel and Iran for more than a month, I don't think any things can be reached.
Okay. Mr. Yadlin, maybe I can get you to respond to that and also to give us a sense of where the Israelis are going on Palestine. This is what everybody in Europe is wondering. I think it's probably what plenty of people in America are wondering. What is the game plan here? There doesn't seem to be one observing from the outside. Is there one? And to what extent do the broader regional dynamics that we've just been hearing about factor into Israeli decision-making?
Now, first, let me straight the record, okay? Israel haven't started the war. Hamas started the war. Israel haven't attacked Hezbollah. Hezbollah attacked Israel for 9 months until we decided to put an end for that. Israel haven't attacked the Houthis. The Houthis attack Yemen, UAE, and Israel. So Israel has not initiated this war and have not enlarged it. It was an Iranian idea to have a ring of fire around Israel, and all of them attacked Israel. So Israel is not the problem. Israel is not west of Saudi, we are north of Saudi. That's for geography. But I'm saying that from 1933, and this comes to the Palestinian, we reached the Oslo Accord. And what we got? Terrorism in 2000 to 2005 that killed 1,500 Israelis. Then we withdraw from the Gaza Strip to the last inch, to the 67 border. We dismantle all the settlement. And what we got? Hamas and the 7th of October. So we try stability. We try to solve the problem. But you know who is not for two-state solution? The Palestinians. The Palestinians never recognize Israel as a Jewish state. The Palestinians always speak about Palestine from the river to the sea. And they see Palestine and another state that will not be Jewish. They never recognize Israel as a Jewish state. So, and the Arabs never put their skin in the game. Look, I published in November 2023. I'm not Israeli government, by the way. I want to finish the war in Gaza. I'm preaching for it in the last year. And I published a plan in November 2023 for an Arab takeover with Palestinian technocrats that are linked to the PA in Ramallah symbolically, because the PA in Ramallah is also corrupt, inefficient, supporting terrorists, and educating for terrorists. If you want to know what is the hope for a two-state solution, is change the education in the Palestinian territories, the way it was done, by the way, in the UAE. I met some leaders from the Gulf before the Abrahamic Accord, and they told me one of these days, we will have peace with Israel. But our street is not ready yet. We have to change the preachers in the mosques. We have to change the curriculum in our schools. So there is Israelis, a lot of them, that were for two-state solution. Unfortunately, after 7th of October, no left was left in Israel, okay? And we need a generation. We need the Arabs to take over Gaza. And they haven't done anything, by the way, until Trump came with a fantastic plan to take the 2 million Palestinians out of Gaza to Egypt, to Jordan. Suddenly they came with a plan. And they have to, this is the plan for the day after. But the first and what will bring the end of the war is the hostages. As long as Hamas holding the hostages, the war will continue. Hamas could have ended the war in November 2023 if we put all the hostages on track, send them to Egypt, and the war was over. So don't forget the cause of the war, and don't forget how you can finish it.
Okay.
Yes, there is a prime minister in Israel that is not so much interested in finish the war because of political consideration.
Yep. Okay.
I'm speaking against him in Israeli media. I'm writing against him. I think the war should be over in Gaza months ago. But it will not solve the problem as long as the Palestinians will give up on terrorism and education for terrorism.
Okay, we're running out of time, and our two other panelists want to jump. Please keep your comments brief, because I then want to go to questions. I'll start with Dr. Al-Shamlan.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm not going to get into any polemics here, but I want to take this opportunity to really clarify certain misconception which populates the discussion around this subject, not just here, but in general. First of all, Abrahamic Accords. The Abrahamic Accords has nothing to do with the idea of enhancing peace. Maybe it has other reasons, interfaith dialogue. It has nothing to do with the idea of a march of peace, simply because when you have three parties to the Abrahamic Accords, there's the Arab Party, the United States, and Israel. Each has its own logic for going to the Abrahamic Accords and signing the Abrahamic Accords. For Israel, the idea is this, that since the mid-90s, there was this idea, which was marginal then in Israel, but increasingly became dominant, and it says that we can have peace with the Arab countries without giving up on the land, without recognizing the Palestinians' right to self-determination. This is what Netanyahu in the mid-90s called reciprocity, peace for peace. And that is a new formula, because always understood until today, actually, most countries in the world, including the Europeans, is that to have peace in Palestinian, Arab-Israeli peace, you have to have peace for land. So the idea now here, peace for peace, so we can have peace with the Arab countries without the giving up on the land. For the Arab side, there is this calculation, maybe correct, maybe incorrect, I think it's a bit exaggerated, that in order to achieve influence in Washington, you need to go through the channels of the people who are most influential in Washington, which are the pro-Israeli groups and lobbies, and by going through this, you will gain leverage. So it is coming through that direction. For the American side, there is always this idea that we are working for peace. So it is really presented to the American public opinion that we are having peace. It has nothing to do with the peace process, with the peace as you know, the substantive idea of peace. That's why things got worse after that. Okay. Let me just say just one thing,
briefly, please.
About the
so
peace
Assad,
process.
why Saudi they have normalization talk?
Please. No. Okay, let me say. Okay, let me clarify this.
We need to get to some.
Yeah, I'll clarify this. Saudi Arabia, before the October 7th, there was an engagement with the Biden administration. It was very different logic and basis from the Abrahamic Accords. It was with the Biden administration and with close consultation with the PLO, the Palestinian authorities. And it was the idea that you can have a normalization in exchange for a recognition for a Palestinian state. Actually, Saudi Arabia since 1981 has put on the table the idea that recognition of Israel in exchange for withdrawal of Israel from Arab land in exchange for normalization. And 2002, the Arab peace plan is a Saudi peace plan. So that was very different before October 7th from the Abrahamic Accord. So, but slightly, the peace process is very dear. This is the last demystification in the Europeans. among the Europeans, to some extent the Americans, but the Europeans in particular. In the region, we don't talk about peace process because we know this is all shambles. But why they do that? Why they insist on every forum, they talk about reviving the peace process? It is for this reason. The European position is this, that on the one hand, they are, of course, against the occupation. You know, they call it the occupation of the Arab land in 1967. At the same time, they give the major European countries, country like Germany, for example, military, economic, diplomatic support to Israel, which allows it to maintain the occupation. So there is a contradiction in the position. How do you escape that contradiction? You invent a fiction called the peace process. So you say, while we are doing this contradiction, we are hoping that we will go on a peace process. So
we're going to have to. Do you want to say something very brief?
Very briefly, I just want to say on a positive note that the Abrahamic Accords demonstrates that progress can slowly be made. My concern is that the military might that Israel possesses, the huge successes they've had on the battlefield are not translating with clarity as to where Israel actually wants to go. In fact, you could argue that it's compounding the situation because an absence of the very question you said, which is what unites us all, the Arab communities, Israel, indeed the West, as to where we should want to go. How do we get stability there? And I just also stress that education is something that the Abrahamic Accord community can offer to Gaza and indeed the West Bank. I don't mention it too often, but my brother was killed by the Bali bomb. He was killed by Al-Qaeda. There were 15-year-olds who did that bombing because they were indoctrinated, promised a fast track to paradise because they had no education. And there's a lot of that going around in Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis as well, because this is what they're promised to do. And it's education. Longer term, it's going to take time, that we require. But if you can't get the Arab nations into these places because you're constantly at war, then we cannot start the progress to get to somewhere looking towards peace.
Let's go to questions. Please keep them brief. Please tell us who the question is directed to, and please tell us who you are. Who wants to start? And I've got some questions here on Slido. We've got a question over here. And maybe we can take 2 or 3 in the interest of time. Yeah, please stand up and tell us who you are once you've got the mic.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Nikola Dimitrov, former Foreign Minister of North Macedonia. A question from the distinguished speakers from the region. In the region I come from, the Balkans or Southeastern Europe, for years there is a belief that if you want things to be done, you call the Americans. This, to some extent, persists even nowadays, although the reality is obviously different. So my question is, in your calculus, planning the future, pursuing the interest, to what extent you think of Europe as a stakeholder? And if not Europe, then perhaps to a particular European country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over here, please.
Thank you for a fantastic and very difficult panel. I have a question, though. It was mentioned that Israel has a democratically elected government. Joanna Bryson, Heritage School of Governance. They went through 5 elections in 4 years, and they wound up with a government that was not very popular. There were protests of 1/8 of the people, 1/8 of the population were on the street every weekend because they were worried about what was being proposed for the judiciary up until 7th of October. So the question is not about how this relates to Israel or the Middle East specifically. This might be democracy. There are other nations that are also having these problems right now. So can you say anything a little bit more broadly about this context?
Thank you. Do we have a final question from the audience? And I'll take one from Slido. Is there a double standard in Western rhetoric on Israel's aggression against Iran versus the Saudi-led campaign against the Iran-backed Houthis? Now, we've only got 5 minutes, so I think what I'm going to do is ask each of the panelists to speak for 1 minute. You can address whichever question you like, and then we can bring things to a conclusion. So why don't we start off with Mr. Yadlin?
I'm very glad to answer the issue of the Israeli politics and 7 elections. Yes, Israel is a democracy. but democracy in danger. We have to be very careful not to slide to a Hungarian or Turkey kind of democracy. Democracy is a check and balanced democracy based on norms that keeping it in place. It's not only election, it's the freedom of speech, it's the freedom of press, it's the fact that you will have the next election. And Israel is fighting in 7 fronts externally and 1 front in-house. The good news is that according to all the polls, this government lost the trust of the people.
Yeah.
And if the prime minister was behaving according to the norms after such a failure in 7th of October, he would have gone to election.
We'll have to leave
He
it
would
there.
have gone to, he will put a commission to investigate the failure. He's not doing it. His political survival is a compass in his behavior. That's why the war in Gaza is continuing, and I call for finishing it. It has nothing to do with the Iranian issue. Because Iranian program is not for civilian use. Civilian use is not for 60%,
Dr. Al-Shamlan.
for 5%.
Yes. Thank you very much. Regarding the question here, I would say that the Arabs since the mid-70s were relying on the idea that the US in the end will deliver the just solution according to UN resolutions. That it's the only country which has leverage over Israel. So they will, if you like, convince Israel to withdraw from the occupied territories in exchange of peace. Now this has reached a dead end. Today, I think, Europe is important in terms of morally, diplomatically. Today there is on the table the international initiative for the enforcement of a 2-state solution. It started at the UN, and in this month there will be and more European countries are coming out and accepting that, despite Israeli objections, but people are recognizing that this is the only things to keep the aim of a 2-state solution alive, because it's the only possible long-term solution. I would say, in a nutshell, Israel is really on a self-destructive path with this idea of disregarding completely the idea of recognizing the Palestinians as a political community.
Tobias Ellwood.
Yemen is just one of many examples across the Middle East where we sort of gave up. Those who know the history, it arguably shouldn't be one country, or it should be a federated model. And we didn't bother leaning into the governance. As part of the discussions with John Kerry, we stepped back, and Saudi thought they could actually deal with this from 20,000 feet using F-16s. That was never going to happen. It's us becoming less risk-averse and looking more, I think, cognitive approaches to solving, whether they be in Lebanon, whether it be in Yemen or Libya, Somalia, all these places. We've stepped back and allowed governance to deteriorate, and indeed security to fracture. And it requires us, the West, to be a bit more emboldened about looking at deeper, wiser, more strategic solutions.
Dr. Al-Ketbi, you get the last word.
Sorry, European. You don't matter. The only who matter is the US. You couldn't stop war in Gaza. If the US, they put pressure, they can stop the war in Gaza. If they put pressure, they can stop also. The war is going between Israel and Iran. And that's why everybody looking to the White House. You are now more occupied with Ukraine, which is your security dilemma now. So with all respect to 2-state solution, I think we have to concentrate now to stop the war in Gaza, and only the American. If they put pressure and they want to stop the war, they can stop the war.
So, time for Europe to step up is the slogan of this conference, but perhaps not so much in the Middle East. Thank you very much to our fantastic panel. I suspect we could have got on for rather longer. Thank you to the audience.